My most recent sub-17 5k PB attempts recap. Ipswich Twilight 5k, fail. A14 Derby, fail. A14 Derby return leg, fail. Felixstowe Parkrun, fail. Brighton 10k, success. But whoa, hang on a second, let's replay that back. That is right, guys. After so many attempts of trying to go sub 17 minutes in the 5k, I finally do so at the Brighton 10k, where I take a massive 29 seconds off my 5k PB. But how is it after all those 5k PB attempts, I do it during a 10k race? And how is it I take quite a significant chunk off my PB? Well, there's quite a few things you've got to look at for the Brighton 10k, which has allowed me to have this miraculous performance. First of all, if you were to look at the weather on the morning of the Brighton 10k, you would see it was ideal running conditions, perfect for PB. First of all, the temperature, it was between 10 to 11 degrees, so it was not too warm and not too cold, just the right temperature which you would want on the race day of your 10k. Another thing to add when talking about the weather is that there wasn't no rain nor wind, so this meant that the weather, it was perfect and it wouldn't hinder my performance in the 10k. The second thing which we should consider looking at is the Brighton 10k's course itself. The course, it is out and back, it goes along the promenade, and well, it is completely flat, all on concrete surfaces, so these hard surfaces, that is what you want to be running on when going for a 10k PB. So yeah, a great surface, there is no hills, so that meant that the course, it is perfect to go for a PB. And the third and final thing which you should consider was the race itself. You see, the Brighton 10k is a race that has had the largest numbers of participants which I have ever been in a race with. In total, there was 2,932 runners on the course that day, and how this was an advantage for me is that I got myself into a great pack with a load of runners around me to work with. And well, if I am in a pack with a load of runners, this will mean I have someone to stick to. It allows me to get into a great rhythm, and overall, that it could be one of the game changers for when I was going for PB. So with those three things being stated, let's look at the 10k itself and the time goal which I had set myself out to get at the Brighton 10k. I can tell you now I wasn't going for a 5k PB because after all those sub 17 5k PB attempts, I came so close. And to do it during a 10k, well, that pretty much seems impossible because you've got to run the 5k twice. But I can tell you now, nothing is impossible. In all seriousness though, the target which I was going out for in the 10k was to go for sub 36 minutes, which seems quite practical to me, it seems quite reasonable, and it doesn't seem too unrealistic, because a few months ago I set my PB at the time at the Snetterton 10k with a time of 36 minutes and 4 seconds. Well, that was quite a long while ago now, and since then I'd put a lot of training in, and I felt like I was in a pretty good form, pretty good shape. So I felt to shave off those few 4 more seconds, then I felt that was something which I could achieve and I could go sub 36. And well, if you watched the Brighton 10k race day vlog, you would know I most certainly did go sub 36 with a time of 33 minutes and 41 seconds. So how is it that I went and did a 2 minute and 23 second 10k PB whilst also doing a 29 second 5k PB or 16 minutes 32 seconds? So let's analyse the race itself and let's look at how it went for me. I'd never done a race quite like the Brighton 10k before because in that start pack before the race I was in around the 35-minute mark area and there was just so many fast runners around me. I'd never been at a start line with so much competition. And well, when I started, I must have been probably around position 100th, and to have 100 people ahead of me at the start of the race is something which I'm not normally used to. But the adrenaline at the start was incredible, and the crowds too. It was truly electrifying, and I managed to get myself a pretty good start. I went off in the first kilometre in 3 minutes and 22 seconds. And to be honest with you, that is the pace which I normally go out in with the 10k, because usually I go off way too fast. But today was different because I came out of the blocks and I knew that I probably would slow down. I could potentially burn out. But here's the thing, we got into the second kilometer and I was still feeling really good. I wasn't feeling the lactic acid coming in and I felt like I still had a lot to give. And well, naturally, you should feel that way during the 2k point of the 10k. But I can tell you now before, I have not always felt that way. So in the back of my head at this point now, I had two thoughts. One, you're probably going to burn out at some point. Two, you're feeling really good at the moment and there's a lot more you can give. So naturally, with the pace not slowing down, I then start to move up the pack a bit and I start to move up the position order slightly. And while heading into the third kilometer, my pace had not dropped at all. In fact, it was slightly faster on average. And by this point, I knew that I could definitely hold this pace for 2 kilometers more to get to the 5 kilometer point, but could I do it again for another 5 kilometers? Well, that was a totally different question. But by this point, I had worked myself into a brilliant pack. At one point, there must have been about 20 of us within about 4 seconds of each other, and well, I was right smack bang in the middle of that pack. And well, naturally, with a lot of runners around me, it felt like the work was being done to me, and all I had to do was to stick to the person ahead of me. And that is pretty much how the next few kilometers went for me. The fourth, the fifth kilometer, I came round at the halfway mark at the turnaround point, and I knew I most certainly had ran a 5k PB. The time I wasn't entirely sure yet, but I knew I definitely had gone sub 17. By this point, turning around at the 5k, I could definitely feel the lactic acid starting to creep into me. The pace, it hadn't dropped yet, but could I hold on for another 5k? Well, that was most certainly going to be tough. Through the 6th and the 7th kilometer, and I was definitely starting to regret going off so fast. I was now in the zone where I had the demons shouting at me to slow down. But with only about 3 kilometers left to go now, it was about maintaining the pace, not letting it drop too much, and trying to stick in for those final few kilometers. And well, if you were to look at the pace chart from this bit onwards, for the final few kilometers, it does drop ever so slightly, only about 3 or 4 seconds though, and despite it being slightly slower, all of these splits are still way above the 10k PB pace. So, did I burn out? No. I most certainly did hang on for dear life in those final few kilometers, but I managed to somehow maintain that pace going below sub 3 minutes and 30 seconds per kilometer for every single split, and somehow I managed to maintain the pace right until that finish line. And by the time I got to that final kilometer, I knew I most certainly was going to run a 10k PB, but the question was now by how much? And well, despite my legs feeling very heavy, my lungs are burning, I still managed to put on a bit of a sprint finish to get every second faster as possible. And I came across that line in 33 minutes and 41 seconds, which was a 2 minute and 23 second PB. And well, this was incredible. I was over the moon with that time, and I would say I had never done anything quite like that before, but that would be a bit of a lie actually. Because a few years earlier, I did something a bit similar at the Allen Brown 10k, where I ran around a 2 minute 10k PB. I also ran my 5k PB during that race with a time of 37 minutes and 21 seconds. But this time, however, I replicated something very similar to that race, but this time it was a bit faster. So yeah, 16 minutes 32 seconds, that is the 5k time which I ran during the 10k race. After all these sub 17 5k attempts, to be able to do it during the 10k, it is quite strange really. It makes me feel that I definitely can go faster in the future, and whilst this was a 5k PB, it was an unofficial 5k PB because I still won't have it on the official websites, and it still will say 17 minutes and 2 seconds. So after technically running a sub 17 5k, I still haven't done it during an official race or parkrun, so I feel I definitely want to do that to be able to update my times and to say I have officially run a sub 17 5k. But I do have a lot more confidence with me now because I know I can definitely go sub 17. I've literally done it during the 10k, so hopefully if the conditions can be right on the day when I choose to do it during the 5k, hopefully I can get another big PB. So if you guys are looking forward to seeing how low I can take my running PBs, please do consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.